at Literary Princess, and today I have a George Eliot project video for you. If you are new here, welcome. I am a fifth-year PhD student in English literature with a focus on Victorian literature, and I specifically like to look at novels by women writers. Starting in January of 2023, I decided I was going to read all of George Eliot's fiction in publication order. I meant to do this just from January to December of 2023. It worked out well because there were 11 pieces of fiction and I would have a month there in case anything took longer than 1 month. That did not work out because the mill on the floss took me forever. So the George Eliot project has come into 2024. And for my January read for the George Eliot project, I read Felix Holt, published in 1866. This was now the only George Eliot novel I had not read before. Most of these have been rereads, or I had read part of it and then DNF'd it for whatever reason, but this one I had no experience with, and quite frankly, had never heard anybody talk about. So I was skeptical going in, especially with the title, Felix Holt, the Radical, because that makes it very clear that we are going to be dealing with something political. So those of you who might have been watching previous videos might know I was very hesitant. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like this. I really liked this. I don't know what happened. So in this book, we follow quite a few characters, but there's kind of three main characters. The first is Harold Transome, who is the second son of the Transome family. He had gone off to India to make his fortune, and when his elder brother dies, he returns to England to take over the estate, which has become impoverished, and he is able to restore it with his money. So there is an election for Parliament, and he decides he is going to run. However, unlike basically everybody else in his family, he is not a Tory. He is a radical. And this causes some grief to his mother, Mrs. Transome. And people are kind of confused because the Transomes have always been Tories, and there's a lot of kind of suspicions about him. However, he is trying to gather votes for the election. We also have Felix Holt, who is a working class man, and he considers himself a radical as well, and really truly believes in the cause. However, he's kind of bluntly spoken, which puts people off sometimes. And then we have Esther Leon, who is the daughter of a dissenting minister, and who kind of feels herself to be higher than most of the people in her social circle. She's considered haughty, and she acts kind of like a lady, and is not very involved with her father's church. Now, as the election progresses and tensions kind of start to run high, there is also an issue with the Transome's lawyer, Mr. German, I think is how it's pronounced. And he has been embezzling money. But he also has a secret that he finds out about the Transomes and about who the proper heir to Transome Court is, that he thinks he can use to get out of the charges against him. So we get what becomes a love triangle between Harold, Esther, and Felix. We get these very high political tensions, and we get these very personal issues regarding parentage, inheritance, entails, and I really, really liked it. By the way, I should have said, there's going to be spoilers. I'm terrible about saying this before we actually start the video. There is going to be spoilers in this. So until now, I have tried not to say any spoilers. From now on, there's going to be spoilers. So usually my biggest complaint about George Eliot's books is that her pacing is really off. Now, I did not have this problem with Romola. I thought the pacing was actually very good in Romola, which is the book that precedes Felix Holt. So I was pleasantly surprised that we continued on the good pacing. I was like, wow, oh, awesome, maybe we're getting better. But I know that Middlemarch comes next, which I did not like the pacing of, so I'm like, but maybe I'll like it better. It's fine. One of the biggest criticisms of this is that it's kind of Eliot's most ridiculous plot because it is so legally complicated, but I actually really liked it. First of all, I enjoyed the characters. I really liked Esther Leon. I liked her story. I was less enthused with some of the more political parts surrounding Felix and Harold, which I always feel like that's the case, is I don't like the men that the books are named after as much as I liked the women that they're not named after. Like, you know, Adam Bede, Daniel Deronda, and Felix Holt, they're all kind of bland, blah men. And the women are interesting. But, however, the book, even though it is centered around an election and a riot that ensues, it's not really about the politics. The politics actually play a pretty small role in the outcome of the plot. The story is about this inheritance and this difficulty of the who is the heir of Transome Court, which I found very interesting. And, you know, it is complex, and you're finding out things at the beginning that don't come in until the end, and then I feel like I'm not explaining it well at all. But for me, the real core of this story was Esther. I feel like it could have just as easily been named Esther Leon, which I feel like happens a lot with George Eliot's books, as they're named for the bland man, but really they could be named for the much better woman. It's fine. Because it all ends up hinging on her, because it turns out she's the heir of Transome Court. By some complicated entail that is delayed until a certain member of the Transome family passes away, which he does during a riot incited during the election. And then the estate is supposed to revert to the Bycliffe family, and Esther is secretly the daughter of Maurice Christian Bycliffe, who has passed away. So we get this whole complex story about how it came to be that she is raised as the daughter of a dissenting minister. There is some other complex parentage stuff going on that I don't want to actually reveal, because you don't get it revealed until the very end of the book, and it's a really good twist. The story really hinges on Esther and what is her choice going to be, because she has the option, she's a few options. She can take her place as heir of Transome Court, and I suppose oust the other Transomes from it because they are not entitled to it legally. That never really seems to be an option. The real option seems to be that she marry Harold Transome. And she takes her place as a lady, and she has wealth and comfort and all this, or she can marry Felix Holt, who has sworn that he will always be poor, and she can give up her claim on the wealth. I would say that is what this story is. It's about inheritance and money and the choice between love and a certain type of morality, because Felix Holt has very specific beliefs and morals, and wealth, comfort, and station. I cannot believe that this book never gets talked about. And again, I understand why people are kind of put off by it because of the whole political connotation. I get that completely. But it is such a good story. I had a great time with it. Again, the pacing, I mean, it's a slow-paced novel. All of George Eliot's novels are slow-paced. However, some of them just drag, and then the most exciting part is dealt with in like 20 pages of a 500-page novel. That's not the case here. It builds up to the riot, which happens about halfway through, and then it just keeps building with all this other tension. Felix Holt is accused of manslaughter during the riot. We have a trial. We have Esther's complicated feelings. We have this whole other issue going on with Mrs. Transome and the lawyer, Mr. Jerem, and Harold. And I just thought it was so masterfully done. And it's such a delight to have seen George Eliot grow from scenes of clerical life to this. And I just think this should be talked about more. This is such a good book. So basically, if you get anything out of this video, it's that you should go and read Felix Holt. I know it sounds scary with its subtitle of The Radical, but it's really not about politics, I promise. The politics are there, but it's really not about that at all. I thought this was marvelous. So I was struggling with what to give it. I ultimately gave it 4 stars. I was thinking 4.5, but I gave Romola 4.5. And Romola, I don't even know how it's pronounced anymore. Anyway, and I didn't like it quite as much as Romola, but I did really like it. So this is probably more of like a 4.25 star if I did that, which I don't really, although I did put it as that on StoryGraph because I could on StoryGraph. But I do highly recommend this. I am so happy that I read it because I never would have picked this book up if not for this project. And I am so glad that I did. Oh, that is Felix Holt the Radical. I have 3 books left of the George Eliot project, and the next one up is my nemesis, Middlemarch. However, I am taking February off from the George Eliot project for 2 reasons. The first is that for Feb Regency, I am reading Cecilia by Frances Burney, and that book is 1,000 pages. And I don't need to be reading multiple stupidly long books at the same time. But also, March is March of the Mammoths, and let's be honest, reading Middlemarch for March of the Mammoths, it sounds good. So I wanted to do that. And that's what I'm gonna do. So February will be off. In March, I will be back to tell you whether or not I like Middlemarch upon rereading it. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you read this book? What did you think of it? Have I convinced you with my very poor summary of it to read it? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.